Okay, so we are now recording. Hello, Isa. As you know, I'm Boyd Cohen, a professor at Agata Business School in Monterey. Paul,
And I'm Paul Rogers in the Bitcoin space and the recent author of Money, Love, and Bitcoin.
and we are here with Isa today. She doesn't need much of an introduction for the Bitcoin community. She's very vocal and active, not just on Twitter, but in the IRL, in the real world, in Isla Mujeres and far beyond. And we'd like to talk with her today about her agenda around building a Bitcoin circular economy on Isla Mujeres, but also her motivations, her hopes and fears for the future. And let's get started. Thanks for joining, Isa.
I want this in Spanish or English?
English, because we're
How?
going to distribute it to a larger audience. Yeah. So, first question. What inspired you to dedicate so much energy to orange pilling Isla Mujeres? Because you were not born there or you weren't living there previously.
No, so to make the long story short, my boyfriend is Mexican, so we were long distance for 6 years. And when we decided to move together, he had a restaurant and a hotel here. We were like, why don't we just move there? But I grew up like a long period of my time in the United States, and at the time I was in Miami. And in Miami, obviously, you know, in America, there's like the huge feminist culture, and they're like, never leave your life for a man. So I was like, I need something of mine in Mexico so I don't get bored and I don't like hate him for it. So I decided I needed to find a project. And I've always been in the Bitcoin space for a while now. And at the time, like I kept talking about it and, you know, praying for it to see if something would come up. And it was like in the time where I was, for some reason, the phrase of like Bitcoin is not ready for 8 billion people was, you know, like I was chipping at it. And I was like, why don't like I orange pill the island, you know, and sort of create this experiment to see if like why we're not ready for 8 billion people and how can I contribute to be ready for 8 billion people. Because at the same time, like if we start to think about it, if we don't test out this theory, like Bitcoin is our only hope right now, and we need to see what's working and what isn't and how to, you know, keep improving the infrastructure. So I was like, one, it sounds super cool to say I orange pill an island, and two, conduct a life experiment and, you know, trial and error, see what can work, what doesn't, what's realistic. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. So I tweeted, I was like, I'm gonna orange pill an island and I'm gonna save this tweet for when I do. And I didn't really have a plan. I'm not gonna lie, I just sort of like winged it. And because I feel like if you have a plan, you're gonna keep sort of putting these barriers in your head of like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. I was just like, I'm gonna go all in, whatever happens, happens. So right now we're still like testing out that phase and like trying to see what works and what doesn't. And so far we've been doing pretty well.
When
Hey,
you
it's the nice thing. Just do it, right?
Do it.
when you arrived, was there any traction for Bitcoin or nobody knew anything till you got there?
I came with this mentality that people are gonna wanna know about Bitcoin, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna offer a free course about Bitcoin. Everybody's gonna line up. I'm gonna have students. No, that's not how it happened. I had to like deliberately like try to reach out people and try to get students. And it made me realize how early we still are. Once you're in the space, you realize that you, for some reason, you're like, oh, I missed the train. You know, I'm so late into Bitcoin. But no, normal population, they don't understand what Bitcoin is. Maybe they've heard of it if you're lucky, but it's not common knowledge. People don't know, especially in a developing country, it goes way over their head, or they relate it with scams. They think it's, you know, you're gonna scam them, or for some reason it has a really bad rep. And to answer your question, it's like there was only one Bitcoiner on the island that I found on the Orange Pill app. And when I first met with him, he was like, you cannot bring Bitcoin on this island. You can't be so vocal about it because there's a lot of narcos and cartels. Like, you have to be careful. So that was like another barrier that I didn't even think was going to be a possibility. But yeah, that's literally, I didn't know many circular economies sort of already started with the social aspect. I kind of came in here super blindsided and oblivious to everything. But it was a good reality check, in my opinion.
So starting from zero then, you know, as an outsider, I did visit Isla Mujeres. We almost met a few months ago, but didn't quite make it happen. I did struggle myself trying to spend sats on the island. We interacted on that. It's possible, and from what I can tell, it's a lot more possible even now than it was a few months ago in terms of growing adoption. I know you have your tuk-tuk. You just launched this new gym, which is maybe more of a personal project, but maybe it sounds like Bitcoiners can access it too. You have courses. So can you share with us, you know, you've come a long way in a relatively short amount of time from an outsider perspective. So if you can share anything about sort of like how much you're noticing the growth and interest in Bitcoin since you've started, some of the things you're most proud of, some of the challenges you're facing.
Well, in my defense, you did not want to spend money on food, and you didn't want to go to tour. You only had 2 hours on the island
True.
to leave downtown, and we're looking for a souvenir shop. So
Correct.
you had a lot of limits because the most places that I focused on is cafes, restaurants. I do try to like span and branch out, but you're right, like there's not that many places. That's why I created sort of like this info guide for Bitcoiners. When they come, they know where to spend their sats, because it's a small island, but you need a method of transportation. And there's a Bitcoiner that recently stayed in Mayaquita for a full month on the island, and he has managed to orange bill 2 taxi drivers. So we have that now, and has made me realize the importance of tipping and having waiters accept Bitcoin as a form of tipping. So I'm learning from all the Bitcoiners that are coming to the island, because they come with like new ideas and the ways to like do things differently. Because while I'm here, like I try to do like what's a simple, like the simplest way as possible for me to orange pill merchants, not orange pill, but onboard them into accepting Bitcoin. And I'm not gonna lie, like when you do it long enough for yourself, you kind of not get like down, but you sort of are like, no one's gonna accept Bitcoin, but you keep like chipping at it. You get rejected a lot. That's what I'm trying to say. But since you last came, we actually managed to get Sean Petty, which has this company called Everything is Isla, where he has 130 properties on the island that now accept Bitcoin or Lightning.
Wow.
We got 2 taxi drivers that now accept Bitcoin as a form of payment, 2 waiters that accept Bitcoin as a form of payment, and 2 more shops, well, 1 shop and 1 coffee shop in the downtown area to accept Bitcoin. The thing is, one of the things that I learned from this Bitcoin Circular Economy Summit that I reached was to find an area and stick with it. It doesn't, numbers don't matter. What matters is location and trying to get, for example, the way that I see the island, it's literally a long strip, and you have downtown where you arrive from the ferry, Midtown and the South Point. I'm in the South Point. So what I need to do is sort of choose an area or a strip and just focus on that. Focus on that strip, those 10 merchants, and have that as like, I need to get all of them to accept Bitcoin. Because sort of game theory will play out. They will see like, oh, they're getting more businesses. I need to start accepting Bitcoin and then sort of expand. But I've been doing it completely, so not wrong, but without order and without structure. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go eat here. I'm gonna try to orange pill them. I'm like, do it all over the place. I need to focus and dive into like sections of the island and try to get them to accept Bitcoin rather than getting the whole island as one. You know, I need to do that better.
So I have a question. So that makes a lot of sense in the how you will go about doing it and trying to convince people in a circular economy to see the advantage of Bitcoin. But can you talk a little bit about the why? Now, those of us who are in the space, we understand the big picture why. But on the ground there, where you are or in other experiences, what are some of the practical applications that you see? Why this is going to really benefit people? You've talked in some spaces about, the corruption of governments and the lack of freedom and things. Is that resonating with people there? Are they experiencing some of these issues? No. Okay.
So the thing is, here in Mexico, many of the people have already been so screwed over. They don't even realize that the government is so corrupt, or they're just immune to it. So when I would teach the locals about Bitcoin, in a way, they didn't care. Many of the people that I'm teaching to, and it could be different in different parts of Mexico, but in the island in particular, they don't have bank accounts. They don't save money. And the only thing that they understand is that the US dollar is better than the peso. So it's made me realize that, because I was, mind you, like I mentioned earlier, I was living in Miami. I was one of the lucky ones that found Bitcoin as a way to, to preserve my wealth, like I didn't want my money to deteriorate in a bank account. So I wanted to invest in something that will literally be for my future and hold actual money, not create, but have sound money, something that we haven't seen since like the 1913s when the Federal Reserve was created. So that's what kind of like sold me. But when I came here with that mentality, like, do you know who prints your money? Do you know that the central bank here is the one that is just can print money out of thin air? They don't care. So what I've realized and like been more of like their why, I'm gonna answer it in two parts, because one thing that I've noticed is just simplifying. We complicate things. They don't care why we care. I have to understand that they have completely different interests than I do. So I have to meet them where they are. And what I've realized, what resonates with them a lot is you have a peso, the dollar, and this is Bitcoin. So they're beginning to see it from just, this is another currency. Because at the end of the day, my end goal is to create a Bitcoin circular economy here on the island. The benefits of Bitcoin, they're going to see them eventually. But you just have to be patient. And there's different angles of Bitcoin that you can tackle, like the freedom perspective, the savings perspective, the government perspective, and just trying to meet, because there's this saying in the Bitcoin space, everything relates to Bitcoin. Whether it's food or time preference. So you have to find where, let's say you want to create Bitcoin circular economy, where that community holds their values at. And that's one of the ways that I'm tearing it. And I'm realizing that because I give them sats for attending the classes to the students, because they are sacrificing their time. Most of my students are adults, and they come to the classes at the end of their shift. All they want to do is go home, relax, drink a beer, or be with their friends. The last thing that they want to do is go to a class and learn. They don't have that initiative, especially since in the island, the classes for kindergarten to, I think they go to school until they're 15. It's only 3 hours long, so they're not used to investing in their future. They're not like, they don't think, how can I figure a way where I don't have to produce when I'm older? Not produce, but like not be working when I'm like 80 years old. These people live day to day. They don't understand how to save. No one's ever taught them. Their families don't even know. Their savings are tandas. Tandas is like everybody unites money. For example, for your daughter's sweet 16, the whole community comes and helps it out. Or there's a wedding going to be on the island from one of the chef from the restaurant, Manquita restaurant, and they find godparents so they like crowd fund the event, and I realized when I've been paying them in sats for attending the classes, they've unconsciously have been saving, because they can't use that money or like they would have to go like away from their routine to use that money, or they either within themselves they start creating circular economies by exchanging it to pesos between themselves and whatever. So it's like kind of like a hassle to use their sats. So they've unconsciously have been saving sats, and one of the students was able to pay for her cancer surgery with the sats that she was stacking from the classes.
Wow.
The taxi driver, Tomas, he was stacking sats in a 2-week period, and he ended up getting into a car accident. He's fine, but he managed to pay for the damages with the sats that he stacked. And the thing is, like, if they wouldn't have been saving their Bitcoin, that money, where would have it come from?
I'm
So-
curious on that topic. I think you work with Get Based, right? The production. So I actually saw one of their videos a few months ago in Vancouver. I don't remember if you were in that video or not, but they went to Vancouver and experienced a circular economy there. And one of the things that struck me was that basically every retailer they went into to engage with, they always asked the question, what do you do with the sats you earn from commercial transactions in your business? And every single one of them said, we use it as a forced savings. None of them actually converted to fiat and use it. And I found that fascinating. And it sounds like what you're saying is that starting to happen on the island as well. So whether they're aware of it or not, they're actually saving in Bitcoin, which is pretty awesome.
100%, yeah. So Get Based is actually my company that I founded with Adam O'Brien and Julian Figueroa. And that documentary, when we went out to not Orangeville, but we tried to survive using Bitcoin in Vancouver. It so happened to be the day that the liquidity of the Lightning Network was just not on our side. It was
I remember.
So it was very funny because we thought we were just like going to survive, but we actually ended up like, I even had to work at one of the places because we couldn't pay for it. So to get on that is super interesting because many businesses don't understand how big of a marketing is Bitcoin. So for a business perspective, odds are your normal clientele, all of them are not going to pay Bitcoin. There will be customers like 1, 2, 3, or 4 a month that will pay in Bitcoin. But the thing is, like, Bitcoin grows over time. And the thing is, like, you can literally just stack your sats there, don't touch it, and you will see accumulate in the number change. And you don't even have to purchase Bitcoin. So in a way, you're getting non-KYC Bitcoin.
I agree. It's pretty cool.
People don't think about it like that. People
Yeah.
don't realize when you're starting these circular economies that you can be getting non-KYC Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's awesome. I want to, as I know we need to wrap up here, so I'm going to ask you sort of a two-sided question. Paul might have another one for you as well. But the two-sided question is, you talk about hope a lot and sort of that Bitcoin is the only way for a more inclusive, sustainable future for all of us. Where do you see yourself over the next 5 years? Is your life's goal to make sure you've orange pilled the entire island? Or based on what I see, it seems like you're also very active and engaged in activities all around the world as well. So do you have a vision for yourself over the next 5 years? And similarly, the next step is, what is your vision for humanity as we become more hyper Bitcoinized? What would be like your dream state? Like, what do you envision a beautiful future looking like?
Well, one of the things that I've learned, especially after the pandemic, is you can't plan anything. Yeah, you might have an idea of what you want and where you want to end up, but I remember having completely different plans when I was 18 years old, and they got shattered by the pandemic. So life has a funny way of, figuring itself out. Sort of like my motto has been, have like an idea of what you want to do and work every single day to achieve that goal. Have more like a vision. Um, Ideally, like in an ideal world, if I can decide what I want, I wish, Bitcoin get based, the company, could eventually go public. That would be really cool. No, but we want to create with get based sort of like this hub for Bitcoin influencers, or, like this huge community. I have so many aspects in my life that I kind of want to grow, like get based, BTC Isla here on the island. So 5 years is a long time. It's a really deep question. What I do know is I do want to create a circular economy on the island, because Bitcoin is hope. And as, not to get super dark, but when you start digging into what's happening in the world, you realize that we're kind of screwed. We're entering like a totalitarianism state. And the only way that I see out is Bitcoin if we do it correctly. There is a chance that Bitcoin can become centralized. And I don't mean like, but by centralized, I mean when we're having all these countries getting Bitcoin strategic reserves, in a way, they're stacking a lot of Bitcoin. So I know like 19 million Bitcoin are already circulating, but at the same time, we do have to talk about the dangers of having, Bitcoin strategic reserves. Like our stable coins, having them, for example, what's happening with the United States of America, trying to make sort of like, how do I explain? I don't want to talk bad about companies because I haven't done a lot of my research, but we just have to be careful and realize that it is our duty as Bitcoiners to, run our own nodes and make sure Bitcoin stays decentralized.
Great. Well, yeah, it's sort of two observations. And the first is, what I hear is a lot of passion and deep values. And that's what you're bringing to the space. And I think that's what everyone, whether they're a Bitcoiner or not, needs to bring to life and to the activity they do. And if we bring that adding value and contributing to humanity rather than trying to extract value and what we can get from others, that's the type of structure that will help us really do a better job of improving humanity and not just fixing the money, but fix the world. But the other observation, and going back to the discussion about what your experience was on the island. So what I heard is you have, a relatively unbanked community that's primarily a cash-based economy. And yet in the cash, they know the difference and they have a value structure between the peso and the dollar. One is better money than the other. So if they were going to save something, they would spend the peso before they would spend the dollar, right?
No.
And so that's a Gresham's law that the bad money drives out good. You're going to use the bad money first. You're going to use the peso before you use the dollar.
No, they know it's more valuable, but still they choose the peso. They rather have pesos. It's That's what I mean. It's like their mentality is completely different.
So
Like,
they're
like that's another thing like that you deal with. Like, for example, like many of them think, you know how Visa, MasterCard, and American, when you pay with card, they take a 5% fee.
yeah.
They think that the owner of the restaurant takes that fee. They don't grasp these ideas. Like their mentality is completely different. One of the things like many, we all talk about in the Bitcoin space, it's like, oh, we've all been indoctrinated. We all, like the education system is so bad. But at the same time, the education system in America has taught us to sort of critically think, which I think in places where you, like in developing countries where they don't spend that much money in like education and stuff, they don't have that ability to critically think.
Right.
So,
But
or like, sorry.
yeah, no. But there still is a value judgment that they're making,
Yes.
regardless of how they use, that the dollar is better than the peso. Correct?
Yes.
And if,
It's
because
worth.
obviously of practical matters, they can't use their sats as easily as they can use pesos and dollars. It can be that form of money, which is if you can begin to get them to hold that for longer, and all of a sudden they see this is actually worth more than even dollars. This stacks up even better money. They'll see that objectively as something that it's like, wow, okay, maybe there is something to this. And that is the opportunity that then maybe, in you orange pilling them, they'll get orange pilled themselves when they actually see it and have the experience. Because right now it's a nice theory, but if
100%.
you can get those in on their phones and they can watch the value of them go up in pesos and dollars,
And
it'll
also
mean something.
the Bitcoin community has helped out so much in a sense that I'm very active on social media and I try to like, because many of the not the Bitcoiners, the locals are like, what's in it for you? And I tend to post a picture of their Lightning address. And I'm like, listen, there's nothing in it for me. And I can show you. And by posting, like, for example, that picture with their Lightning address, Bitcoiners from all over the world donate. And they start to realize that it's bigger than just money. It's like this huge movement that's happening. And one of the cool things, it's like they start to sort of like, they see it for themselves. Like, not only is the price changing, but people are donating to them, making them want to believe. So it's kind of really, really interesting to see that community aspect of Bitcoiners play out too.
On that note, and this will definitely be the last question, is sort of signing off. Anything you'd like to say to who's going to be watching this, including a group of students at the end of this week, as your message of hope, which seems to be a word that resonates with you and how you connect with Bitcoin is around hope for a better future. So any thoughts for the audience you'd like to leave them with?
My thoughts or suggestion would be to find how you can contribute to the Bitcoin ecosystem, because we all have a role to play. We just have to figure out what is your role. I'm not a developer, so it's like I can't develop, Lightning stuff. So it was like, what can you contribute to the community? Because I think in life we should all have, three types of hobbies. One that produces money, one that makes you healthy, and then one that you're giving back. So like, what are you doing to give back to Bitcoin in a sense? Because that's how we make the system grow, how we, whether it's teaching, whether it's, you know, helping your mom get Bitcoin, or developing a new way to make Bitcoin more seamless, you know, instead of using like the 24-word seed phrase. Because at the end of the day, if we're gonna want Bitcoiners to hold Bitcoin on layer one, it cannot be that complicated. And I'm not talking about for myself, I'm talking about like some of the people on the island. I'm like, do I trust you with your Bitcoin and 12 words, you know? So there's things that everybody can do to contribute, and it's like finding what can you do to help the community.
Great. That's a great way to end it. Thank you, Isa.
You're welcome. Thank you guys. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for accepting my chaos.
That's all right. We enjoyed the conversation, and I'll be sharing the video with you